Hello, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests. It's my honor to be asked to come here today and talk to you a little bit about learning entrepreneurship. Successful entrepreneurs have generally been seen as larger-than-life characters, always male, brilliant, eccentric visionaries with rags-to-riches stories. In short, very unlike 99% of all of us in this room and on Earth. Along with this myth came the logical conclusion that real entrepreneurs are born, not made or taught. You might go to school, you might learn to make a business plan, but this was not enough for you to succeed in the rarefied air of true entrepreneurs. Almost 30 years ago, Babson College, where I have the honor of being president, stood this myth on its head. Generations of sons and daughters of the most successful family businesses had passed through Babson's doors, and it was clear to our professors that while some people have a natural inclination to innovate and problem solve by starting a new business, many others have the capacity to learn to think and act entrepreneurially in any environment. Startups, established corporations, family businesses, social enterprise, or even government, which is my favorite, of course, as a former politician. So how do you teach entrepreneurship? The first thing we do at Babson is to throw our students in head first. Their first year, before they have the benefit of taking accounting or marketing or managing classes, we divide them into small groups and use design thinking exercises to help them select an idea for a new company. We give them a small amount of money and a strict timetable. They must start, run, and close down their businesses within the year. No matter how successful the business becomes, it must be wound down so that the students can learn aspects of the life cycle of a company. As you know, many fail, so you need to know how to close it down. And if they repay their loan, the rest of their profits go to a nonprofit of their choice. So why do we do this? Many reasons, but first of all, to remove mystery. All of our students have hands-on experiences around starting and running a company. So the second time they do it, it's easier. Almost everyone makes mistakes. Some make truly large mistakes that first time around. So failure and setbacks are not viewed as defining or permanent. Indeed, our founder, Roger Babson, famously observed that neither success nor failure is permanent. We also do this because for the next 3 years at college, our students pay much more attention and find their courses more relevant. In fact, they often come to me and say, I wish I had known that when I was starting my first business. We also encourage our students to view starting an entrepreneurial venture as a journey, not a destination. I've never met an entrepreneur who came up to me and said, I had this idea, I executed on it exactly as I planned, and today it is a huge success. But I've met dozens of successful entrepreneurs who say to me, I thought I wanted to do this, but along the way I found something much better. We teach our students to fail quickly and to pivot towards something that works. We give them the confidence to let go of one dream and take up another. When our students leave Babson, they're excited and ready to tackle the most pressing social and environmental and economic issues of their time using the problem-solving technique of entrepreneurial thought and action. Today, an entrepreneur does more than start a business. They tackle a social or environmental problem, they create jobs, they increase opportunity, and they generate prosperity for society. In short, in the modern world, all students should learn the fundamentals of entrepreneurship as part of their basic education. At a moment when youth unemployment is dangerously high in many regions around the world, empowering youths to create jobs and opportunities for themselves is essential. At Davos last week, there was much talk of a fourth industrial revolution, which will replace many of the jobs we have today with robotic labor. There was apprehension and fear generated by the vision of fewer jobs, even for skilled laborers. But there was also great optimism that entirely new types of employment would be created by young entrepreneurs who see unmet needs and fill them in unforeseen ways. For example, the explosion of the sharing economy. Companies like Uber, which claims to create 20,000 new jobs a month, or Airbnb. That gives us a small taste of this kind of disruptive innovation. So what can we do as policymakers, as leaders, as educators, to foam the runway for these unforeseen and disruptive innovations? For one, we can work together to create an entrepreneurial ecosystem that will support all kinds of job creation and the rapid growth of existing SMEs. Education and supporting entrepreneurs is only a start. Government must recognize potential roadblocks to innovation and investment and adapt laws and regulation to allow for new ways of employment and doing business. Banks and other financial institutions must engage with businesses with high growth potential. These are the ones most likely to create new jobs. And civic organizations, like those headed by our next panel, must reach out not only to established companies, but also to those which are young and struggling. And an important component of any country reaching its full economic potential will be how it engages women in the workforce. Women's unemployment equals GDP left on the table. According to a recent McKinsey study, as much as $12 trillion globally is left on the table because women are not working. Unemployed women also represent talent and ideas wasted. No country can afford to operate with only half of its potential being used. Babson is excited to be partnering with Omair and Lockheed Martin to create a truly Saudi university focused on harnessing the entrepreneurial spirit and talent of the young people here in this region, in the King Abdullah economic city that you heard about in the last panel. We hope to bring our award-winning WIN Lab, the Women Innovating Now Lab, to Saudi as well. It's one of our goals at Babson to be the leader in women's entrepreneurial education. And indeed we have, and we're very proud to have, 54% women in our incoming centennial class this year. I am inspired by the work of the Saudi women business leaders on the next panel, and I look forward to working with them to let the world know about their groundbreaking achievements. In closing, the future of our global economy rests in the hands of young men and women who have the entrepreneurial spirit to tackle our world's challenges with optimism, innovation, and resilience. I know that Saudi Arabia is the home to many such talented young people, many of whom I am glad to call students and graduates of Babson College. We at Babson look forward to partnering with our friends in Saudi Arabia to advance entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship of all kinds. Thank you. Next, please join me in welcoming our distinguished panelists to discuss the role of women business leaders in Saudi Arabia. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Lama Al-Sulaiman, Vice Chair and Board Member, Jeddah Chamber of Commerce and Industry. She was the first woman in Saudi Arabia to be elected as a board member in 2005, and she was re-elected as Deputy Chairwoman in 2009. She was also, as I'm sure many of you know, elected to the Jeddah Municipal Council in December and is the owner of 2 businesses and also serves on the board of Rolacco Holding Company. Welcome, Dr. Sulaiman. Next, I'd like to introduce Dr. Basmah Omair, who's the CEO of Al-Sayeda Khadijah Bint Khouwailid Businesswomen Center, which is a lobbying center for women's empowerment and for legislative reform. She's also the owner of Baco Consulting Firm, an advisory group for government and the private sector. Next, we have Dr. Afnan Al-Shuaiby, who is Secretary General and CEO of the Arab British Chamber of Commerce in London, promoting trade between Britain and the Arab world. She's also a board member of the Arab International Women's Forum. And finally, we have Mrs. Abeer Alhashimi, who is the Middle East North Africa Managing Director for Fullbridge. She is working with universities, governments, and organizations to help students and young professionals acquire essential business skills through real-world experience. Prior to coming to Fullbridge, she worked in technology and banking. Please welcome our distinguished panel of panelists. Welcome. Wonderful to see you all. We are going to start with a few questions to get the conversation going, but then what I'd like to do is I'd like to open it up to everyone who's so patiently waiting here. It's very hard to be the last panel of the day, so we're excited that you stayed here to listen with us, and we want you to be a part of the discussion. So first of all, though, let me just begin with the most fundamental question, and you can answer this very quickly. Tell the audience, what kind of benefits do you see, both for business and for society, for promoting diversity within the workplace? Obviously, you work very hard on this issue, so why do you do this? Let's start here with Dr. Lama.
Thank you. I will not go into the theoretical reason why diversity is important, because diversity, you're talking about gender diversity as well as national diversity or people from different countries. But from a gender diversity point of view, I think the women deserve to join and the women have the right to participate. And I think that is one of the main reasons.
Dr. Basmah?
Simply because we complete one another. I mean, that's how society is. We're half of society. We have a different perspective that we bring to the table. When men look into certain issues, they look at it from their perspective and their experience. And when women look into certain issues, they look at it from their experience and their perspective. And it's only when you add both of them together that you can actually move forward in a nation in a comprehensive and complete manner.
Dr. Afnan?
I will just say we just complement each other.
Yes?
I think it's because of the economic reason, being more productive nation, and also it's good for a person to feel more sense of accomplishment.
You know, it's interesting, at Babson we've recently done some research that actually shows that companies that have women fully integrated into their leadership are actually more profitable and also more innovative. So I think that over time, the benefits will become very clear. So let me ask the question that many people have in the back of their mind, which is, how quickly is the glass ceiling being broken in Saudi Arabia? We've seen some very rapid progress in recent years in terms of women entering the workforce. So can we again start down with Ms. Hashimi? And ask you, how quickly do we see change coming in terms of women entering the workforce and that glass ceiling being broken?
Okay, first of all, in terms of women entering the workforce, just for the past 4 years, the Saudi women employment has increased 600%. So that number might seem very big for people living outside Saudi, but for us, we felt actually that increase, going to the shopping malls, to the supermarkets, even to hospitals. And that's of course due to the so many initiatives that were started by the government and the Ministry of Labor. In terms of the glass ceiling, I think it varies based on the companies and the environments. I've worked, for example, in Saudi Hollandi Bank. And when I joined them, everyone was surprised that there is an IT manager that's a Saudi female, and that was in 2008. When I left them 6 years later, the vice chairman was a woman, We had an executive woman, we had 3 senior managers women, and many women in middle management. So for places like that, I don't really see the glass ceiling. Some other places, yes, they still need, women I think need more time to really see that progress, and they have some challenges.
Dr. Basmah?
Being in being the CEO of the Lobbying Center, I see it in a different perspective, in the sense, as much as breaking the ceiling, let's say, or moving the ceiling upward is a responsibility of women, the bigger responsibility actually lies on the men in that ceiling, or on top of that ceiling. I have noticed, and we also have research, when the men, the head of, whether it is the head of the government, whether the head of the ministry, whether head of even family-owned companies, when he is a believer of women's issues and believer of women's added value into the company or the organization, he automatically removes the ceiling. It just, you don't feel it. So you see very much variety, where we have places where the ceiling has been not even felt, and then you have areas where the ceiling is still felt. Of course, it really, really depends on how supportive the men are in that organization, and then you see the trickling down. We found a lot of support with King Abdullah and now King Sulaiman as well when it comes to women's participation. We still strive to get women into board of directors into the private companies. One of our recommendations in 2007 and 2010 in our forum was to have women into the Shura Council and into the ministry cabinet. We've got the women in the Shura Council. We're looking forward to having women as part of the ministry cabinet. So the ambition and the aspiration is always there. But when you come down to private sector or ministerial, you'll see that you have sometimes, we have a vice mayor in Jeddah that's a female, but for example, in other areas not. So it really also depends on the support of the men.
Yeah. Dr. Lama, you've commented before that there are different challenges for women in different places in the workforce. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Yes, we were having the conversation on the differences between businesswomen and women as employees. Of course, businesswomen, people seem to compare them. Businesswomen are supposed to be equal to businessmen, so the challenges are exactly the same. But this is not exactly what happens, because when women own businesses that are similar to the businesses that men would own, the challenges are similar. However, when women own businesses that seem to service women only, these women are facing immense challenges. And the reason for these challenges is that a lot of the time, these businesses don't seem to have clear regulations. And this unclear regulatory form produces a lot of these challenges. These women don't have the ability to grow. They have the will to grow. The regulatory issues are usually much more harsh on these women-only businesses than a regular normal business. And I've seen a lot of women that have struggled for years on really minor issues. But women only is always a subject that's never put as a priority.
Dr. Afnan, what sort of challenges do you see from your perspective?
I think the challenges still remain, but we have to give credit for what's been going on, and I think we as women in Saudi Arabia here have reached to places where we never dreamed of maybe 15, 20 years ago. If we look into the population of the kingdom, over 50% are under the age of 25. Of those, over 50% are females. And if we look at the statistics, women are doing much better than our fellow men in education, in what they're doing within the scope of work. So I'm very optimistic, specifically that I can see it from another view, being outside the kingdom and seeing what's happening from the other side. So it's very optimistic. However, I'm very ambitious to see things get better and things improve more than what they are today.
So that leads me to wonder, where are the great opportunities that you all see in terms of expanding women's participation in the workforce?
There are common opportunities, and there are opportunities come with the challenges that need to be resolved. When you're talking about women's participation in the economy, we have infrastructure problems that we need to solve, and we also have the ceilings and the opportunities itself. For example, for working women and also for businesswomen, we need transportation is an issue. We also have daycare problems and the balance between women's responsibilities at home and their career aspirations. So we have to find that balance between career and family. Maternity leave reform is also needed for working women. It's only 10 weeks. It doesn't really add up to what is international best practices. When it comes to businesswomen, we still have some regulatory issues that need to be improved. We also have financial issues, not from the sense of not finding finance, but as much as it's not as easy for her to find capital from banks, but she finds it from family and friends, or her own personal saving. But we still need more networking opportunities for women to know that there are business opportunities. So it kind of differs on which side you stand, whether it's a business or as an employee.
I have to say that when I listen to you saying those things, I think all those things would be said by women in America as well.
Challenges with women's issues are the same worldwide. I mean, this is one thing that people misunderstand, that Saudi women face different challenges. We do. We have our own, just like any culture has its own challenges. But seriously, women's feelings of the unbalance between career and family, wanting more opportunities, wanting the best for their families, wanting the best for her career, and these things are almost similar worldwide and not just in America. And we have to find solutions that cater to each culture and each region, but with the same standards.
Yeah, I think there's greater commonality than difference, in truth.
There's one more point I want to talk on the challenge. To be able, the opportunities are so many in Saudi Arabia. I mean, job opportunities are there, and the women are qualified enough. And the highly qualified women are, there's a huge number, and if you look at the unemployment, you'll find that those that are university graduates are actually much higher. Sometimes people tend to focus on women to find opportunities for women. It's as if it is a social responsibility. And putting it as a social responsibility diverts the action of actually giving the women real opportunities, because they are university graduates and they actually deserve good jobs. And it's not only about the quantity of the women that are finding jobs, the quality of these jobs is extremely important. And the women have the capability to actually perform quite highly in this market. But there's always, in the decision-making places, talking about the women issue seems to always stop into a limitation of how far can we talk, how far can we push boundaries, instead of just saying, these women deserve it, then we're going to give them that job.
So I'd like to talk a little bit about the role of technology in facilitating greater employment opportunities for women. And because of your background in technology, I'd like to start with you, Abeer. Could you talk a little bit about how technology has the potential to open up more opportunities for women's employment?
Yeah, sure. Technology is always an enabler for business and labor for innovative ideas. So one of the recent initiatives that's based on technologies is providing opportunities for women to work from home or teleworking. So last year, Fullbridge, as a company that does content development, we've created courses to increase women awareness about teleworking and how to successfully work from home. And there is some new initiatives from the Ministry of Labor also to promote teleworking and make it easier for companies to hire teleworking women. Also, there are a couple of companies that started based on providing technological solution to do the tracking, reporting, and all of that that supports teleworking.
And what about internet businesses? Perhaps it's just because I'm at a school for entrepreneurship, but I seem to meet women constantly who are starting online businesses. Are you seeing that in Saudi Arabia as well?
Yes, definitely. I think especially the younger generation, they highly use technology. So a lot of businesses started from Instagram. for example, and later on they opened a shop, or they were just testing the waters through social media. And I think word of mouth, we're, especially the younger generation, and even the older generation learned a lot from their kids about using social media. So I think it helped a lot spreading the words of new startups.
So Dr. Basmah, I saw you wanting to jump in.
Yes. I love the technology and all the benefits that can help women, but I want to caution against two things. There's a research that we did in Markaz Sayeda, Khadijah, Bint Khouwailid, regarding working from home, because there was a lot of people asking that women should just work from home and keep them at home. And so we decided to ask a nationwide in Saudi, women and men, if they think working from home will actually help women participate more in the economy. And 87% of society said, yes, that's an amazing idea. We should have women work from home. And when we asked the women themselves, do you prefer working from home or working part-time? Only 32% wanted to work from home. The rest wanted to work part-time or full-time. Reason is, we need to just caution that not to label that, okay, she's a woman, she has kids, she needs to just stay at home. Because sometimes you need that 4 hour to go out, to meet people, to get exposure, to get experience, and go back home. And what we stand for is that we need to let women decide what is good for her and her family at the time, whether her kids are young or in college or whatever. We should not make that decision and say, now that the technology is here, everybody should just sit home and work. Maybe that is going to be, a solution for rural areas or certain age groups that need to be at home. That is as far as that's as far as the technology. When it comes to the social media, one of the main reasons women are actually starting their business online is because it's very difficult to go and maneuver through the regulations. So maybe abroad it's just the latest thing that came up, and it's more convenient and all that. But here at times it's because to get away from some of the regulations and some of the bureaucracy of starting a business. So just wanted to bring that here.
So if I can jump now to Dr. Afnan and ask, actually I'd like to have all of you, but if I could start with you, Dr. Afnan, give examples of companies that you think are doing an exemplary job of incorporating women into the workforce, or who have taken a leading role in doing this.
I think the majority of the companies, the major companies in Saudi Arabia today, are taking a lead on this, with having females, if I may say, being part of the organization. Until recent, it was very segregated. It is segregated to an extent now, but however, there is a good sense of interaction between the males and the females on a very professional level, which has really amazed me. And I don't want to, give names of companies because I don't think it's fair. Because I think the majority of the major companies, but just to name, the leaders on this, Saudi Aramco, a Zamel company, but there are so many out there that are participating.
Dr. Lama?
Yeah, I think it actually starts from there. Of course, there are major big companies and international companies that understand that gender diversity is actually going to be an added value if they start employing women. But then there's another thing that has been good. Regulation has helped some companies to actually, whether they thought they did not even think about it, to actually push for women, because we have something called nitaqat. And nitaqat is a quota of Saudization that is required for companies. And nitaqat has been good because this has pushed also to open up opportunity, whether we accept it or we don't accept it, for women, because to actually be able to reach the quota required for that sector. So that also has created some kind of creativity and innovation in companies that had absolutely no idea of actually employing women. It was not even there in the vision. And this has pushed a lot into the market. But there are still many companies that prefer not to employ women. And I always use these places where I am today is to call first on the international companies that come here. We've had such bad international media in the past few months on a lot of different issues. And I always wonder why we get bad international media when international companies locally have not done enough to actually open up opportunities for women.
Or men.
Women first
Or
for me.
men.
So no one wants to call out particular companies here today?
yes.
Call out. I mean, it's not an issue. Go ahead.
Okay.
Call
No,
out.
I mean, I visited Bupa here, and they have done seriously an amazing job. I mean, I have to talk about people I visited.
Yes. Dr. Basmah?
There's the Alayan group. There's ones that were forced into it. There's ones that were not forced. So the ones that were forced to it by regulation are Shaya, Al-Hikar, because of the saleswomen. The ones that actually were not forced into it and did sales, Al-Fitahi started way before any regulation came out. We have, as she said, Buba, Savola. We have a lot of
GE
Abdul Latif
came
Jamil, a lot of them.
GE has done a lot.
Yes. There?
Yeah, well,
there's
I
more.
would like to mention Sadat. Sadat was, when I joined them in 2003, that was way before we hear about the Ministry of Labor initiatives and nifaqat and all of that. So in 2003, when the Sadat project, which was the bill payment system for Saudi Arabia, it was a project by the Saudi Arabian Monetary Agency, and they were looking for women, Saudi women, to work in Sadat whenever possible. So they would only hire men if they could not find a woman. And that's, I think, that move gave a lot of women, including myself, the confidence to work in technology and very critical positions. So I think I'm very proud to be part of the team that built Sadat.
A word of caution, it's not about just having women in the company. It's where do they put the women? If it's just the low-level skill jobs, then I'm not really too happy, because what happened with the quota, as a result, they wanted to fill it in with Saudis, and women are more committed because they don't have that many opportunities, so they commit to the job more. So a lot of the companies actually hired them in factories, which is great, but how many companies actually got them into mid-management, top management, and into board of directors? That is the true diversity, when you don't just bring them in low level, but you actually diversify within the management.
So picking up on Ms. Hashimi's point, all of you are very well qualified and have participated in business and other parts of life. What qualities would you say that you would advise young women that they need to develop if they're going to be successful in business?
Tough skin.
Patience,
Tough skin.
tough
Yeah,
skin,
tough skin.
I would say determination.
determination.
I think for me it's passion and just continue learning. Be recognizable.
Dr. Lama?
Yeah, I mean, I want to elaborate a bit more.
Yes, please.
I think I should elaborate on tough skin as well.
But to actually start a business is a tough decision to make, because it's your own personal business. You know, you don't have a 9-to-5 job where you can actually leave and then let somebody else make the basic decisions. But you will find that a lot of the young girls I've noticed, and I was one of them once. So basically, if I talk about myself and I say, when I graduated from Saudi Arabia as a biochemist, the first thing I did when I left university is I went and I opened a shop. Because for a while, I was not too happy working for somebody. You know, I still wanted to be my own boss, where I can come in at the hours that were good for me. I would leave when I want. But then, of course, I opened a shop, and then I found out that I failed. So I lost all my money. I had nothing, and then I closed, and then I went back to work. What I'm trying to reach here is working before starting a business is also not a bad thing to do. So try to get a job for at least, because it teaches you commitment, it teaches you discipline, it teaches you to be bossed around, and that gives you a feel of what it means to be an employee. You'd actually be a better employer if you know first what it is to be an employee.
Excellent answer. And by the way, that experience is not unusual. So why don't we now turn to questions from the audience? We have a little bit more than here we go, one right here in the front row. Do we have a microphone that is going to be brought, or do you just need to shout out?
Until the microphone comes, can I just explain the tough skin? Just so
If there
it's
is a
not
microphone
misunderstood.
coming.
Basically, not to take things too personal, as women entering the workforce at the beginning, sometimes from an emotional perspective, they might take things too personal and not be able, therefore, to move forward. And sometimes I wonder if we should, I thought a couple of times of giving a management. How do you manage men versus managing women, and how do women lead differently than men lead? And I think that if we better understand that business is business, and that women men have to know how to deal with women, and women have to know how to deal with men when it comes to.
That's your tough
That's
comment.
what I meant.
The tough skin comment. Yes. Yes, sir.
Little bit of a devil's advocate.
Always welcome.
Well, first I'll start with what I think is a better answer to your first question. Why engage women? Because I think it's the natural thing. And if we admit that this is the natural thing, do you panelists agree or disagree with the statement or the argument that says over exposing women's issues and demands, or even news like celebrating the first woman in this or that, or Shura Council or whatever, do you think this really creates a counter-defense culturally or maybe socially from the women's community? Shouldn't we just calm down and make things happen naturally? There's a cultural change that is taking place, and maybe over exaggerating on the demand of liberating women really fires back. This is not my belief, but this is just a question of a devil's advocate.
Can I answer that?
So does publicity about firsts and accomplishments actually become counterproductive?
Actually, thank you for the question. I think we need to remain on the first, but maybe not the first of what we're doing now in 21st century, but actually go back to the first lady in Islam, Sayeda Khadijah Bint Khouwailid, Prophet Muhammad's wife, and teach women about true role models of being businesswomen, okay, and how she recruited Prophet Muhammad based on akhlaqu, how she actually was leading. She was the boss of Prophet Muhammad, so that means women can have leadership positions. And I think we need to define these role models, female role models to women, and say we're not first here. We had all those first back then. And if we need to it's not about liberalization, it's about modernization and going back to our roots, but understanding them correctly. And I think we need to bring that back up to life and a more role model.
Thank you. Yes, right here, please.
My name is Hana Sayed, and I'm the head of diversity at the Olayan Group. And I would like to share with you, Dr. Healy, that our diversity strategy, which we call the House of Diversity, has been recognized as a best practice in the region by the World Economic Forum. And we do a lot of extensive work with the subject of gender diversity. My question to the panel is, in your perspective, what is needed to change the tone of the conversation about women in Saudi Arabia from employment to the proper inclusion in the economy? Thank you.
Dr. Lama?
It's hurt my heart. We need to have more decision makers to support women, and we need to talk more about women issues. There is no need to feel embarrassed to talk about women issue. We talk about it so much that I have seen young women, very professional, who have felt embarrassed to talk about the women issue. When I first got elected into the Chamber of Commerce, coming from a scientific background, so I was a lab technician, I walked in for a whole year, embarrassed to sit with the women and only meet the women to talk about women issues. Because we were brought up that, we're scientists and there's no need. But then the more I've been now working on women issues for 10 years, including women and pushing for women participation is everybody's, it's everybody's responsibility. It's every man's responsibility, because every man has, most of these men, and I've seen amazing men and amazing supporters, but most of them were fathers of daughters. And I've seen few men that understood that. But those that have daughters and I feel proud because they actually saw them grow, they saw them get highly educated. These men are going to support these girls. There are, of course, something called chauvinism, and chauvinism is there, and it could be sometimes covered under what is said in an explanation of whatever we want to call it. Yes, chauvinism has been the major challenge. However, supporting, having more people talk about it, not feeling ashamed to talk on about women issues is extremely important.
Thank you.
More.
We have one in the, yes. We have one in the back that I saw. Yes, sir.
Yes,
can't
good
see it.
evening. My question is, are there any projects currently that any of the ladies are working on to encourage women entrepreneurship?
And we're going to have to be really quick in our answers. Are there entrepreneurship programs?
Yeah, there's always continuation. We work on legislation reforms. There's always continuation of bringing up to the decision makers, ministers, and the king and so forth about what needs to be changed to give women more opportunities and remove these obstacles. Then there's other organizations that work specifically in training women for entrepreneurship and giving them the skills. So we just work from the regulatory point of view to open the door for them.
And I would like to, at this point, thank our incredibly talented and distinguished panelists. Thank you so much for making time to be with us today, and thank you for your insights. Yeah.